Hello and welcome to Uncovering Our Hidden History. My name is Anna and I am a forensic genealogist, which is just a fancy way of saying that I analyze DNA results and DNA studies in order to help adoptees hopefully find their biological relatives. And I'm also a historical researcher, so I also pore over DNA studies regarding different ethnic groups to try to sort out who's who and where they, originally came from, if at all possible. And if I've learned anything, it's this: people lie, but DNA does not lie. Your DNA is as unique to you as your fingerprints. And so, so as I said, people lie, DNA doesn't, which is why I like working with DNA. So, something you should know about this channel is I have spent everything that I'm going to present to you on here. I have spent over 4 years, the last 4 years, digging and digging and digging until I could find enough corroborating evidence to support my hypotheses about things, looking for multiple confirmations of things before I was willing to present that. And so another thing that I know, besides that people lie, is that we have been programmed our entire lives. Our parents have been programmed. Our grandparents were programmed. Our great-grandparents were programmed. And, I don't know, depending on how old you are, how many generations back, but I don't know if you're aware that John D. Rockefeller Sr. is the one that instituted the public education system, basically with the intent of creating factory workers. So it was the late 1800s or so, and this is, just a little bit before the Industrial Revolution. And basically, they didn't want, the powers that be, the elite who rule the world, did not want critical thinkers. They don't want you and I to think. They don't want you and I to investigate. They just want us to do what we're told to do. So that's why the public education system was created, was to be able to control the masses, teach the masses pretty much all the same thing, to comply and to just believe what you're told, believe the narrative. So it was the best way to control the narrative of large masses of people. And so I say all this to you because I want to issue a warning, and that is, depending on where you are in your process of uncovering truth that we've been lied about, you're programming, for lack of a better word. I'm sorry, we've all been programmed. It's not just, certain people, but when some of this information that I present to you, your programming will start to malfunction, so to speak. And for example, something I present and you may go, that's just not true. That can't be true. There's no way that's true, right? And that is cognitive dissonance. So one of the things that I'm going to really do as I present is I have put all of my findings in a slideshow presentation, because I am a firm believer in that old saying that a picture is worth 1,000 words. Our brains like pictures. They understand it better. So rather than trying to just explain all of this to you, I want to show you. I want to show you what I have found. And so I'm going to, minimize myself in the camera, but because I want you to be able to see the evidence I found. And feel free, you can take screenshots of that so that you can go and do your own research. I highly recommend if something here is shocking to you, and if it's, especially, here's how you'll know if you're hitting up against cognitive dissonance. It will provoke an emotion in you, like disbelief or anger, right? Like, oh, that's not true. That can't be true. That's not what I was taught. That's kind of the dialogue. And I know this because this is how I started, is saying the same thing. That was the conversation that I had with myself when I started finding out the things that I'm going to share with you. Oh, this can't be true. There's no way that they would lie to us about that. That can't be right. I actually lost some sleep over the things that I'm going to be sharing with all of you. And I thought, well, I'm just going to have to dig. I'm going to have to prove this wrong. This can't be right. And the more I dug, the more confirmation that I found. So I just want to let you know it's a very natural process. We have all been programmed. And when we come up with new information that contradicts our programming, it causes cognitive dissonance. So I just want to let you know that, and it's okay. But if you're having a hard time with something, take a screenshot, right? And then go do your own research. Okay? All right. So sorry about my little diatribe I went on, but I just wanted to kind of lay the groundwork, explain to you a little bit about kind of what to expect here. And yeah, so we'll go from there. So moving on, let me go ahead and pull up my presentation. Okay, so the Kingdom of Israel in Tartaria and the Americas. So this is going to be part one. So it's going to be a 4-part series. This is part 1, and lots of information. So you definitely feel free to take those screenshots. Okay, and then in part 4 of this presentation, we're actually going to dig into some DNA studies to support what we're going to be going over in the slide. Okay, and so this just basically says that no part of this presentation can be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form without prior permission. So just, again, I give you permission. Take screenshots of the information that you want to do some deeper digging on. But what I don't want to see is, please do not take screenshots and then make a new presentation and then do that on your own channel if you've got a channel, or just don't put it out there as if it's your work, because that's plagiarism and that's stealing. But if it's just for yourself to do your own research, then I have no problem doing that. And then also, if you want to get a hold of me, or if you have questions or further clarification about something, I'm going to do my best to try to answer the comment section. If it's, if people are being polite and respectful. But if you have a deeper question or need clarification on something, and don't want necessarily everybody looking at that or reading that, you can email me at ourhiddenhistoryrevealed@gmail.com. So, or take a screenshot of that so that you've got that. Okay, so in part 1 of this series, the objective will be to give conclusive evidence that the biblical Hebrews, known as the 10 lost tribes of Israel, aka the Kingdom of Israel, were the very same people group known as the Native and or Indigenous Americans. I'm not gonna make you wait to to get to what I'm going to say. I'm just going to put it up front for you. So, and they were found throughout North America, Central America, and South America, even into the Hawaiian Islands, believe it or not. The intent is not to claim that every Native American or indigenous tribe was descended from the 10 lost tribes, as it is well known that we had Canaanite Phoenicians over here, also same group, Carthaginians as well. The Carthaginians come from the Phoenicians. and they're all Canaanites. We had the Moors and we had the Egyptians here in the Americas as well. So, but it becomes clear that the native tribes who practiced Levitical law is given by Moses to the Hebrews after their emancipation from Egyptian slavery are very likely these descendants. The other mentioned groups were pagan in their religions and would not have participated. They would have not been practicing Levitical customs. And in addition, evidence will show that the 10 tribes, as well as the kingdom of Judah, including the kingdom of Judah, as well as their descendants, were always of various shades of brownish black and reddish brown color, and that they did practice various forms of Levitical law, even if they didn't always know why they practiced it, because of their traditions being handed down for many, 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 hundreds and thousands of years. So we will also look at the language structure of some of these tribes. Many of their words resemble Hebrew words. So, if you're ready, let's start digging into the evidence regarding the mysteries surrounding the ancient origins of this people. So, who were the ancient Hebrew Israelites, right? To answer this question, we need to begin with the genealogy of Noah, his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their descendants. Okay, Genesis 9, verse 28 tells us, and Noah lived after the flood 350 years. Verse 29, and all the days of Noah were 950 years, and then he died. In Genesis 10, now Genesis 10, we call it the Table of Nations because it begins to explain all the descendants from these 3 sons who became nations in their own right. Okay, so it's called the Table of Nations. So Genesis 10:1 says, now these are the generations of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. So what I tried to do, remember I said a picture is worth 1,000 words. Okay, so what I did is I created pedigree charts to be able to better show. So these would be really good if you're interested to take screenshots of these. So Shem, or sometimes he's called Sem, is where we get the word Semitic. And so Shem was the progenitor of the Semitic peoples, which are the Arabs and some of the Asian peoples, nations including the Hebrew Israelites, which descended from Abraham. He also had the Elamites, and the Persians descend from the Elamites, and the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Lydians, and the land of Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. And then Ham was the progenitor of the African nations, including Ethiopia, Libya, and the Canaanite giant tribes of the Philistines, Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites, Hivites, Arkazites, Zemarites, and the Hamathites. Okay, also the nations of Sumer, Akkad, Erech, and then I think we all know Nimrod, who built the Tower of Babel. And then Japheth typically was the progenitor of the European peoples, whose nations include Gomer, which a lot of researchers or historians link the Cimmerians to him, the Ashkenazi, the Khazarians through Togarmah, and then also the kingdoms of Germany, France, Spain, and the British Isles. Okay, and then the Scythians descended from his son Magog, and then the Medes, it's thought, descended from his son Madai, and then Javan are the Ionians and the Greeks. Tubal, it's thought that they're the Turks, and then Meshach would be the Slavs, and Tyrus the Etruscans, and the Italians. So in a nutshell, that's the main understanding of that. Okay, so then let's look at each one of these by them, by their group. So again, we're not told the name of Shem's wife, but in Genesis chapter 10, starting in verse 21, it talks about the descendants of Shem. And so I put the little scripture reference in the right bottom corner, but you can see that his sons were Elam, Ashur, Arpachshad, Lud, and Aram. And so the Hebrew Israelites descend from Arpachshad. You can see Abraham down at the bottom. Okay, and then here's Japheth, and you can see that his sons listed are Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tiras. And I find it very interesting that in Genesis chapter 10, we're only really given the sons of Gomer, which he had 3 sons, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. And then we're given the names of the sons of Javan, which we see there. So I'm not sure if you've caught that Ashkenaz, and therefore the Ashkenazi, and then the Khazars descend from Togarmah, they descend from Japheth. They are not descended from Shem. So, and this is all in scripture. So technically, they're not a Semitic peoples. Okay, and then we come to Ham, and his sons were Cush, who was the father of the Ethiopians, Mizraim, which later the Egyptians, I think, overtook them, because they were always called, the son's name was Mizraim. And then we have Put, who is thought to be the progenitor of the Phoenicians, and then Canaan. And so you can see all of their descendants listed there as well. Okay, so here is a map that I put in here, and you might have to make it bigger, but it will show in purple are the descendants, all the descendants of Shem and where they were located. And then in orange, you have the descendants of Ham and where they were all located. And then the descendants of Japheth are in green, and you can see everywhere that they were located. So that might be a good one to take a screenshot of it as well, so that you can study that more. So why the long genealogy? Okay, so the purpose of this long genealogy is to lay the foundation of who the descendants were of Noah's 3 sons, which became nations in their own right. So, and it's also, again, to show that Noah's son Shem, or Sem, was the progenitor of Abraham, and therefore the Hebrew Israelites. The majority of Jews worldwide, the statistics that I found were about 90 to 92% of the Jews worldwide, specifically the Ashkenazim and the Khazars, descend from Japheth. The 2 other groups that are an exception to this are the Ethiopian Jews, because Solomon actually had a relationship with the Queen of Sheba and produced a son named Menelik. Okay, and so there is a whole dynasty line in Ethiopia that are descended from Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. And then Sephardic Jews, which a lot of people, the Sephardic Jews seem to be a mystery to a lot of people, but these were actually Jews from the tribe of Judah, from the kingdom of Judah, that at various conquest times were taken as slaves to Sephar, which that was the ancient name for Spain. So they are ethnically the Ethiopian, that group of Ethiopians from Solomon, and then also the Sephardic Jews are ethnic descendants from Shem. Okay, so Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob. Jacob became the father of the 12 sons. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. And so I'm just kind of doing a little brief synopsis because we may have some here who maybe have not read the genealogies or the scripture. So I just doing just a little basic recap here, outline. So after Jacob wrestled with the angel, we're told in scripture, the Most High Creator gave him a new name, Israel. Therefore Jacob became Israel, and all of the descendants of Jacob's sons came to be called the 12 tribes of Israel, and then later on, Israelites. So each tribe bore the name of each son of Jacob, with the exception of Joseph. Okay, most of you have probably heard about Joseph in the coat of many colors, right? So before Jacob died, he called each of the sons in and blessed them. And Joseph brought his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, to his father Jacob to be blessed. And then after that time, Joseph's descendants were known as the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, not necessarily as the tribe of Joseph. So I know that can be a wee bit confusing. Hopefully you're all with me still. Okay, so here's just another little pedigree chart that I popped up here. So we've got Abraham and Sarah, okay, and they had Isaac. Isaac married Rebekah, and then they had Jacob and Esau. And then we're just focusing on Jacob at this point. And Jacob had 4 wives, and these are all the sons down here. He had 12 sons, and so I have put each of the sons under their respective mothers. Okay, so Leah, who was probably, we think, the most mistreated. She was not Jacob's favorite. Rachel was, but she was blessed and was given 6 of the sons. So all the other women, looks like basically only had 2. Okay, now I mentioned earlier that the Arab nations are also Semitic, and this is because of Abraham. So Sarah, it took Sarah a very long time. She was barren for a long time, didn't have any children. She got impatient, so she gave her handmaiden Hagar to Abraham to sleep with, so that they could have a son, which she would basically adopt, and that was Ishmael. And Ishmael is the father of all of the Arab nations. Okay. So after the Most High delivered the Israelites out of Egypt, they wandered in the desert for 40 years. So I think you guys, probably most of you have heard about that Moses, put in the basket as a baby, floated down the Nile River, grew up in Egypt in the palace of Pharaoh, ended up killing an Egyptian that was mistreating an Israelite, and then had to flee for his life to the land of Midian. So he spent, I think it was about 40 years out in the desert of Midian, and then the Most High spoke to him in the burning bush and told him that he wanted to use Moses to deliver the Israelites out of Egypt. So I think most people are probably familiar with that story. So, and then the 12 plagues, of course. So after the Israelites came out of Egypt, they wandered in the desert for 40 years due to the constant rebellion of that first generation of Hebrews. The final straw occurring when the Most High instructed Moses to send in Joshua, Caleb, and one man from each of the other 10 tribes, one representative. And they were purposely to go in and spy out the land of Canaan and bring back a report. And so what you need to know to kind of set the backdrop for this is that the land of Canaan was mostly settled by Ham's descendants, his son Canaan. And it was full of various giant tribes, okay, from him. But there were other giants that were not descended from Noah at all. We're not really told where they came from within Scripture, but if you've heard of the book of Enoch, the first book of Enoch, we get more of the story in there. But these specific giants were called the Rephaim, and Rephaim means terrible ones. Okay, and specifically here, I think they were dealing with the Amalekites. So it says, when the 12 spies saw the Amalekites in the land of Canaan, they were overcome with fear and dread by what they saw. 10 of the men came back terrified and gave a report. Well, let me just stop for a sec. Before I say that, when they were in scouting out the land, we're told in the Bible that literally they had a cluster of grapes so large that they had to put it on a pole, and 2 men had to carry it because it was so large. So everything there apparently was large. But anyway, these 10 men came back, where all 12 came back, but 10 of them were terrified and gave a report that those men they were as grasshoppers in the sight of these giants. Like, they're comparing their size as being the size of a grasshopper compared to the size of these Rephaim giants. In other places, we're told that they were as tall as the cedars of Lebanon. So that also gives some, more description. But only Joshua and Caleb gave a good report that the giants could be defeated, since their Elohim was for them and would give them victory. So the Most High's anger burned against these 10 men. Once again, time after time of his showing them miracles. He parted the Red Sea, they walked through, and then the sea closed back over the Egyptians, right? When they clamored for water, he caused water to come out of a rock. They were fed manna, which manna actually is angel's bread. Okay, so it's a heavenly bread that they were fed. And when that wasn't good enough and they wanted meat, he brought them quail. So they constantly, anytime they were uncomfortable or they were, put out at all, they just wanted to go back to Egypt. Why did you bring us out here, right? So they constantly grumbling against the goodness of the Most High, begging to go back to being slaves in Egypt, right? And then constantly grumbling against Moses, threatening to kill Moses. So the Most High declared that he had it. And he declared that the Israelites would stay in the desert until the rest of that first unbelieving, contentious generation died off. And then their children, so after they died off, their children would be grown, and then they would be allowed to enter the land and receive the inheritance that, their fathers and mothers should have enjoyed, but did not. So really, that's how they ended up being in the desert for 40 years. And so it was so. The children of the first rebellious generation had to live the next 40 years in the desert wilderness until they came of age. And after the 40 years of wandering in the desert had concluded, Moses blessed the people, reminded them of their covenant with the Most High Creator of heaven and earth, and sent them off with Joshua and Caleb to conquer the pagan giant tribes of Canaan. And so what you really need to understand here, because it always just really grieves me when people who aren't necessarily Christians or who aren't people of faith, they always will call the Most High vengeful and murderous and wrathful. But what they don't understand, because they're not reading the scriptures and reading the whole story, is these giant tribes were not nice guys. They were committing horrific acts of bloodshed. Some of them, a lot of them were cannibals, and they were defiling the land. And they were doing every form of debauchery that you can imagine. And that's why there were certain, when they finally went in to conquer the various places, there were some towns and cities where, they did not, they were to leave, not kill the people, right? But they could take the spoils of war or whatever. But there were certain towns that they went into, and they were given clear instruction to kill every man, woman, child, and animal in those. And those usually were the Rephaim towns, or the giant tribes that were practicing these horrific, bestiality, debauchery, cannibalism, bloodshed, and manipulating. I think that they were probably manipulating the human genome. We're told that they were in Enoch, but there's a reason that they were told to even kill the animals. So I just wanted to make a point there as to why it was so severe in some of those cases. So what ended up happening, though, is that the Most High did not allow Moses to go into the land with them, because Moses had a lot of favor. He was very, very close. Scripture even tells us that when he had been with the Most High, he would, come down the mountain or come out of the tabernacle, and his face was so bright that he ended up having to cover his face because the people couldn't even look on him. So he was told to speak to the rock, because once again, the people were grumbling. And in his anger, he snapped and lost it with them, and he struck the rock twice instead of speaking to it. And so because of that, that doesn't mean the Most High didn't love him. It just meant that he disobeyed, and he was not allowed to go into the promised land when they went in. And Joshua was the successor that did that. Okay, so now that we're up to speed, that's a whole lot of hundreds of years of history in just a little bit there. But this was the land that was apportioned to each of the tribe by the Most High through Moses. Okay, so you probably want to take a screenshot to make this bigger, so that you can see, if you're interested, where they all landed. But Levi was the only tribe that did not get a land inheritance, because the Most High separated them out as priests, because they were descendants of Aaron, and they were to serve him. So the other tribes would bring their offerings in, their food offerings, their things, and then after it had been accepted, by the high priest and received, then the priests were allowed to eat off of that. So the Most High was their inheritance, and so that's why they did not get land. Okay, so now we've got trouble. So fast forward several generations to just after King Solomon, and I am getting somewhere with this, you guys, I promise. Stick with me. It sets the stage for you to understand what happened to them after. Okay, so remember, let's go back here for a sec. So you can see from that map that they were all still together. They were all one nation, right? Okay. So now fast forward several generations to just after King Solomon died, leaving one of his sons, Rehoboam, as king in his place. So representatives from each of the 12 tribes came before Rehoboam and said, Your father made our yoke harsh. You therefore lighten your father's harsh service and the heavy yoke that he put on us, and we will serve you." Rehoboam told them to return in 3 days, and he would give them an answer. And during this time, he consulted with the elders who had served his father Solomon, and the elders advised him, listen to the people, right? And do as they asked, and thereby you'll win their loyalty. And then Rehoboam also sought the advice of some of his homeboys, some of his friends, right, that he had grown up with, and they advised him to make the people's burden even more heavy, show him who's boss, right? So, of course, he being young and inexperienced and a knucklehead, took the advice of his friends over the advice of the elders. Not a good idea, guys, never. So when the tribal representatives returned 3 days later, this is what he told them. Then the king answered the people harshly and spoke to them, saying, "My father made your yoke heavy, but I will add to your yoke. My father disciplined you with whips, but I will discipline you with barbed whips." Scripture then tells us that when all Israel saw that the king had not listened to them, the people answered him and said, "What portion do we have in David? We have no inheritance in the son of Jesse. Israel, to your tents." So, and then we obviously can see they lived in tents, right? They weren't living in cities. So the tribes of Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Ephraim, Manasseh packed up their tents and families and headed north. Only the tribes of Judah and Benjamin were left in Judea. However, some Levites and remnants of each one of those tribes at a later date did go back to Jerusalem after Jeroboam. So they were, let me explain this real quick. So the men had to appear in Jerusalem at this point 3 times a year, three times a year at the temple. And so basically what I believe happened is that Rehoboam, because they split now, so you have 10 tribes going north and you've got Judah and Benjamin in the southern kingdom of Judah. So you have the kingdom of Israel with 10 of the tribes, including the Levites, and then you have Judah and Benjamin in the southern kingdom. And I think Rehoboam did not want any of those Israelites going back down to Jerusalem to participate in the feast celebrations, especially, if they had some time to cool down. So what he ended up doing, which was a real bad no-no, was he ended up creating his own temple up there, and we're having them worship in that. And so that was the beginning of the downfall. So anyway, so it got very, very bad at one point. Like, he went to the extreme. He ended up setting up 2 calves for them to worship Moloch, and eventually he got rid of the original Levite priests and he instituted his own priests, probably because the Levites, fearing the Most High, were not going to go along with what he was doing. So at that point, the Levites, most of them went back down to Jerusalem, and then there was, a group of people from every tribe that went back down as well, that they didn't want to partake of, what Rehoboam was doing up there. So if you want to read more about that 2 Chronicles chapter 11 verses 13 to 17. Okay, you guys still with me? It's about to get good. I promise. It's going to get really good here in a little bit. So thus the one nation became 2 separate nations from that day forward. The northern nation, with the majority of tribes, became the kingdom of Israel, with its capital being Samaria. And then the southern nation became known as the kingdom of Judah, and basically with Judah and Benjamin. and its capital was Jerusalem. So you can see there where the separation was. What I like about this map also is you can see where some of the other nations were: the Phoenician states, the Assyrian Empire, the kingdom of Damascus, kingdom of Ammon, kingdom of Moab. So you can see all of those other nations that were around them. Take a quick drink real quick. Okay, so now it's going to start getting interesting. Israel has conflicts with Assyria. So the biblical account of the invasion of BC 732, okay, differs from the Assyrian sources regarding the motivational factor for the Assyrian attack and conquest. According to the Bible, the invaders were brought to Israel by King Ahaz of Judah, who had asked the Assyrian ruler Tiglath-Pileser III for a military intervention against Israel and Damascus. And this is a quote. It says, Ahaz sent messengers to say to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, I am your servant and your vassal. Come up and save me out of the hand of the king of Aram, which is Damascus, and out of the hand of the king of Israel, who are attacking me. And Ahaz took silver and gold and sent it as a gift to the king of Assyria. And the king of Assyria complied. And I gave you the scripture reference there in case you want to read that yourself. So the Assyrian accounts, though, describe the event as follows. Thereafter, the war was thus confined to the north of modern Israel and what is today southwestern Syria. It culminated in the Assyrian siege of Damascus and the conquest of this great city in BC 732. The annexation of the northern part of the kingdom of Israel followed. Okay? So basically, so we have here, there's two conquests that happened in the northern kingdom of Israel. The first one was in BC 732. The kingdom of Damascus lost its independence and existence to the Assyrians. It lost its holdings and they were carved up into Assyrian provinces. Israel, on the other hand, was allowed to survive, although reduced to a fraction of its former size and cut off from the sea. Tiglath-Pileser III captured the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the eastern half of Manasseh, and put the remaining tribes under the rule of a new king, Hoshea, chosen to serve as a loyal executor of Assyrian interests. Okay, so in doing this, it brought Israel's northern territories directly under Assyrian rule. Okay, so if you see on the map here, you'll see the red rectangle to the right. So the eastern half of Manasseh, and then the tribe of Gad and the tribe of Reuben were taken out. They were taken out of Israel in 732 BC. Okay, and then Hoshea was put in place, and the rest of the tribes were allowed to stay in as long as Hoshea behaved himself. Okay. Now, we have a second conquest that happened 10 years later in BC 722. So the eastern part of the kingdom was lost, but as long as Hoshea proved himself a faithful vassal to the Assyrians, the capital city of Samaria remained independent. But during the reign of Shalmaneser V, king of Assyria, the remainder of Israel was invaded in BC 722. And subsequently conquered due to Shalmaneser laying siege to Samaria for 3 years. Because of the limited range of available Assyrian resources for Shalmaneser's conquest, or his reign, the reconstruction of the events depends largely on biblical evidence. According to the Bible, Shalmaneser attacked, and this is Shalmaneser the fifth. He attacked Israel after Hoshea had sought an alliance with So, king of Egypt. And it's thought that that was possibly Osorkon IV of Tanis. So now Now they're in big trouble. So if you look at the map again here, where I've got the blue rectangle, now the rest of those tribes are being taken out 10 years later in 722. This is this is just really sad. So this is what the Bible tells us happened to them. It says, in the 12th year of Judah's King Ahaz, Hoshea, son of Elah, became king over Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 9 years. He did what was evil in the Most High's sight, but not like the kings of Israel who preceded him. King Shalmaneser of Assyria attacked him, and Hoshea became his vassal and paid him tribute. But the king of Assyria caught Hoshea in a conspiracy. He had sent envoys to So, king of Egypt, and had not paid tribute to the king of Assyria as in previous years. Therefore the king of Assyria arrested him and put him in prison. The king of Assyria invaded the whole land, marched up to Samaria, and besieged it for 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria. He deported the Israelites to Assyria, and he settled them in Hala, along the Habor, which is the Gozan River, and in the cities of the Medes. This disaster happened because the people of Israel sinned against the Most High Elohim, who had brought them out of the land of Egypt from the power of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and because they worshipped other gods. They lived according to the customs of the nations that the Most High had dispossessed before the Israelites, and according to what the kings of Israel did. The Israelites secretly did things against their Elohim that were not right. They built high places in all their towns, from watchtower to fortified city. They set up for them sacred pillars and Asherah poles on every high hill and under every green tree. So let me just stop there for a sec. So you may be going, well, what's the big deal? Okay, these pillars were like the monoliths, they like the obelisks, right? And which they're kind of in the shape of a phallic symbol, and we've got them all over Washington, D.C., the Vatican, all over the place. And it goes back to Egyptian practices. And so they are setting these obelisks, these pillars up, and they're meant for fertility, right? And then the fact that they're talking about every green tree. So they're talking about they're doing abominations for fertility and for things of that nature. They burned incense there on all the high places, just like the nations that the Most High had driven out before them had done. And they did evil things, angering the Most High. They served idols, although he had told them, "You must not do this." Still, the Most High warned Israel and Judah through every prophet and every seer, saying, "Turn from your evil ways and keep my commands and statutes, according to the whole law," the whole Torah, "that I commanded your ancestors and sent to you through my servants, the prophets." But they would not listen. Instead, they became obstinate, like their ancestors who did not believe the Most High. They despised his statutes and his covenant that he had made with their ancestors and the warnings he had given them. This is just very telling. They followed worthless idols and became worthless themselves, following the surrounding nations that the Most High had commanded them not to imitate. They abandoned all the commands of the Most High. They made cast images for themselves, 2 calves and an Asherah pole. They bowed in worship to all the stars in the sky, and they served Baal. They sacrificed their sons and daughters in the fire, and they practiced divination and interpreted omens. They devoted themselves to do what was evil in the sight of the Most High and angered him. Therefore, the Most High was very angry with Israel, and he removed them from his presence. Only the tribe of Judah remained. But even Judah did not keep the commands of their Elohim, but lived according to the customs that Israel had practiced. So the Most High rejected all of the descendants of Israel. He punished them and handed them over to plunderers until he had banished them from his presence. When the Most High tore Israel from the house of David, Israel made Jeroboam, son of Nebat, king. Then Jeroboam led Israel away from following the Most High and caused them to commit grave sin. The Israelites persisted in all the sins that Jeroboam committed and did not turn away from them. Finally, the Most High removed Israel from his presence, just as he had declared through all of his servants the prophets. And so Israel has been exiled from their homeland to this very day. And that all is found in 2 Kings chapter 17, 1 to 23. I don't think that I put this slide in, but a little bit further in that passage, it explains that, and this was very much an Assyrian custom, that when the Assyrians would go in to conquer a people, they would remove all of the people out of the land and then settle them in various Assyrian cities. And then they would then take people from the, that had been previously conquered, and then they would transplant them. And so this is what happened, actually, in case any of you are ever wondering why, when we read in the New Testament about why there was so much animosity by the people in Jerusalem and in Judea against the Samaritans, right? This is because all of Israel was completely taken out of their land, out of that capital city, Samaria. And then the Assyrians then brought other conquered people groups in that were not from them at all, and they settled them in Samaria. And so that's why there was this animosity the whole time, because these were foreign peoples living in the land of Israel. And it got so bad, lions were coming in and devouring these people. And so word was sent to the Assyrian king that these people were being killed and devoured by lions because they were pagan. They were pagan in their practices. And so the Assyrian king then sent a priest back to Samaria to teach the people basically the Judaic religion and the customs so that they wouldn't be devoured. And so those people, that's who was living there in the time, of the New Testament. So they were, converts just out of necessity to stay alive. But that's why they were so despised by the Judeans living down in the kingdom of Judah. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So I'm going to need you guys to really pay attention and really examine this. So thankfully for us, the Assyrians were very arrogant. They were very, I'm trying to think of the word. They were very proud of all their conquests and thought very highly of themselves. That's the word I'm looking for. And so they often would carve these massive stone relief panels showing the various conquests of the various people groups that they had conquered. And so what I have on the screen here this is one section from the description is panel A2 of the Black Obelisk, and it's sitting in the British Museum in London, showing Jehu, king of Israel, who is, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that because I'll just embarrass myself, but it's Jehu, descendant of Omri, submitting to Shalmaneser III of Assyria. Its photo was taken by Ben James. And so I will also say that when part of why I needed to do so many slides and to put these on here, because as we progress forward, it's really important for me to make sure that I'm not plagiarizing and that I'm giving proper credit. So whenever I'm able to, I will always try to cite my source after what I put up, just so that I'm being upright in that. So I don't know if you can see this, but in the bottom left corner we have a larger picture of Jehu on his knees bowing before Shalmaneser III. So this would have, this is obviously before they were taken out of Israel, because that was Shalmaneser V. But I took a screenshot and tried to make a close-up in the upper right corner so that you could look at his attributes. And I'm not going to go too much into that right now, but just observe that and see what you notice about Jehu, what his physical attributes look like. Okay. Now, this is an Assyrian relief carving showing the Israelites being taken into captivity when they're finally, when the last of the, what would that have been, 7.5 tribes, right, in 722 BC, when they're finally being removed, the Assyrians made them march out and clap. They made them worship their God in mockery, as if to say, where's your God? Why isn't your God saving you? We're taking you hostage. So they literally were made to worship as they were being led out. And these are some of the priests that were made to worship as they were being led out of Samaria. So again, you have the middle section, and then I made larger the two groups, these two priests here, this is them, and then here. What do you notice about the physical attributes? Okay, do you remember at the beginning I said that they were always of a darker coloring, right? So what do you notice about the features of these priests? Okay, let's see, let's move on. Okay, here's some more. Hopefully you can make those bigger to look and see. Really look at the features of these guys. Okay, now, and just to show that they are a similar people, so the relief carving on the left is showing the Assyrians taking the Israelites from Samaria, and then to the right, at a later date, the Assyrians actually conquered the Judeans as well. Okay, so these to the right are the Judeans living in Lachish, and so you can see they all look to be very similar, and that is because they are all descendants from Jacob, right? So it would make sense that they're going to look very similar. Okay, notice the hair, right? Let's go back here for a minute. Notice the hair, even. You can see it more here with the priests. Don't these look like cornrows? We've got full lips, high cheekbones. Okay, does that remind you of any particular ethnic group? Okay, so I'm just gonna get geeky on you for a minute, but I think it's really important because this is part of my job as a forensic genealogist, is to pay particular attention to different ethnic groups and what their features are. So there are three main type of human skulls. I did not make this up. So if these terms offend you, please don't get angry at me. I didn't come up with these terms. I don't know the name of the specific forensic bone people. I don't know if they're like forensic anthropologists or what, but so like, you know, for example, if bodies are discovered or graves are discovered, these people can study the skeletons. They can study the bone structure, the pelvis, the femur, the arms, the shape of the skull, and they can pretty much tell what type of what, you know, make a guess of what ethnic group they are and whether they're male or female. So we have a Caucasoid skull here. So basically, you know, mainly white person. And you can see it has a higher bridge bone on the nose. The chin is more prominent. And if you look over here to the side, you can see when the skull is turned sideways, you can look at the difference between these skulls, right? The middle one is Mongoloid, which I think is a terrible name, but that, just think of it, that's basically like Asian people, for just to make it very simple. And they have a lower nose bridge, a broader, flatter, outward sloping jaw, which you can see in this middle section. And then the last type or grouping or term for a skull is the Negroid. And they have a broader nose bridge, wider nasal opening, and I don't know if that says subnasal groove, but they have more of an outward sloping jaw. But they also have I'm not going to be able to say that right, like a prognathic or like a more, their front teeth come out more. Okay, so you can see the different shapes and you can tell they're obviously different. So this is how these forensic anthropologists, or, you know, that look at these skeletons, can determine what type of ethnic group. And I find it very interesting that there's three main types of skulls, and I don't know if that has anything to do with like the three sons of Noah. I don't know. But so here's a picture with skin on over here of kind of a side profile. So I just find this very fascinating. Okay, so you can see here with this lovely black woman here, the high cheekbones. You can see the prognathic protrusion here, and the jaw compared to the other two. And so we'll see it a little bit more moving here. Okay, so here I found some pictures, different pictures of black persons or persons of color. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong. I'm not sure what the appropriate term is, and I absolutely mean no disrespect at all. And so you can kind of see some of these features, a little bit more broader, flatter nose, lower nose bridge. And then interestingly here, I put this one in because this is an Asian man. I don't know what country, but you can see like his skull and chin and mouth compared to, I think this is his wife. So just kind of giving you guys a little tutorial there. Okay, so now we're going to go back and we're going to look. So here's our Hebrew priest. Can you see it now? The almond, I forgot to do that. If you look also, the almond shaped eyes, right? The black persons, the people of color, tend to have more almond shaped eyes as well. So let's see, can you see that? Can you see that right here? See the cheekbones. Okay, and just I put this other pedigree chart up here as well, because just to remind you of the descendants of Shem, right? So the Assyrians actually were a Semitic people. They descend from Shem's son Asher. So here we've got Esarhaddon, and I'm probably not saying these right, but it's Esar Haddon. Okay, you can see almond-shaped eyes, larger bridge nose, right? Flatter nose, almond-shaped eyes, high cheekbones, lips. Okay, and then this is Sargon II, Sargon the second, and this is one of the Shalmanesars. Okay, so I think you guys get the drift, but you can definitely see they all are a dark peoples, a Negroid peoples. Again, not trying to use the technical term, not trying to be offensive in any way, but I'm just trying to get you to see here that they're all related. Down here, these are the Elamites. Okay, remember I said Shem had Elam, and then Asher, and then Arpachshad, which is where the Hebrew Israelites descend from. But these are Elamite archers. These stoneworks are amazing. But you can see that the Elamites, similar look. So these are historical proofs. So this is one of those areas where I'm spending time and trying to really show you from history how the Hebrew Israelites were depicted, because when I say that they are a darker color, and I give these descriptions, like a picture is worth 1,000 words. They've been in front of us the whole time. If you've ever been to the British Museum, you maybe have seen these. So, but it's all about context, knowing what you're looking at. Okay, so moving on. All right. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria captured Samaria. He deported the Israelites to the Assyrian cities, and then settled them in Hala along the Habor, which is the Gozan River, and in the cities of the Medes. And this is important, as you're about to find out. Okay, so here is a map I found showing their migration route. Okay, so in the purple, this was the first group that got taken out by Tiglath-Pileser in 732 BC. So here's Samaria, and then you can see, using the purple route, where they were taken and settled. Some were taken here to, I think that's Gozan, and then over here in Nineveh, right? And then the second conquest in 722 BC, so just 10 years later, taken out by Shalmaneser. And then his successor Sargon II, because Shalmaneser ended up dying. But these are what we see in red. So they follow a little bit different path. You have some that are dropped off over here in Gozar, and then but they've got some that came over here and also were in Nineveh, but also in these cities as well. Okay, and then there was a third group that was, it says, deported by Sargon III. So I guess this was out of this group here. Some of these were taken over here, and this is where Media was. Okay, the cities of the Medes. So here, I just love this. I call them the extra biblical books, or the Apocrypha books, okay? Because they fill in the gaps, you guys. They fill in the gaps. And I'm not talking about the Gnostic books. I don't get into the Gnostic books, but the ones that would have been listed in the Apocrypha originally, which was part of the canon. We'll get into that in another video. I'm going to show you what originally was canon in the First Ecumenical Council of Trent. But anyway, I won't take the time to read this right now, but this is the Book of Tobit. And I just highly recommend that you take a screenshot of this and read it, because it's fascinating. We don't have a lot of information, especially in the scriptures, of what happened to the Israelites after they were taken out of their land. And this is why it's good to look at some of these extra biblical books or Apocrypha books, because they tell you. So the Book of Tobit is about a man and his wife and their son that ended up in Nineveh. And then, so it kind of tells this whole story here. And I put the maps here for perspective, okay, to where they ended up in his son when he was grown. So on Tobit's deathbed, he basically tells his son that he mentions the prophecies of the destruction of Nineveh, and he basically says, take your family and get out of here and go to your father-in-law's house in Ecbatana. So here's called Ecbatana, down here is Ecbatana, but that's why I circled. So the son and his family traveled from Nineveh over here to Ecbatana, and it's just fascinating to me. Okay. Well, I think this is a great place to stop and put a bookmark in it for now. Thank you so much for spending the last hour with me. I hope you found this interesting, or maybe gave you some confirmation in what you found on your own research. And I hope you come back next week for part 2, and we will find out what happens to our Hebrew Israelites and where they end up next. If you found this video helpful or enjoyed it, would you please hit the like button, and feel free to share with others that you think would benefit. Until next week, we'll see ya.